the one that everybody asks about, knows about. He's the one that we assume is responsible for a number of the stories that we hear. There is a number of stories about a second young girl. So Jimmy's not scary. Jimmy's just around us and stuff. He's not particularly scary. Then there's another young girl who's not very nice, who we hear about from time to time. I had a guy just walk in here, a young fellow walking out of the blue maybe a month ago and said, "Oh, you've got a ghost here." And I said, "Yeah, we do actually." And he goes, "Oh yeah, an older woman." And I said, "I don't know about that one." And he said, "Oh, I can tell she's here." And I said, "No, there's a couple others." But anyway, so I'll do the short story first, which is the young girl. So nobody's sure who she is. Possibly, obviously, a young lady who has died tragically or unhappily. Not that anybody dies happily, but was another. So she hangs at the staff cottage occasionally, which is the little cottage next door. And she sits on people's chests. So staff that have lived there have woken somebody with pressure on their chest, hands over their mouths, stuff like that, not being able to breathe. It's quite scary, not very nice. And we've heard those stories probably for 15 years that I've not very often. Like the last person was a girl that lived in the cottage for 2 or 3 years, and she only experienced in the last couple of months that she was here. She had mentioned it to some of the other staff that lived there, and they said, "Oh, you've just had a few to drink, and that's the whole thing. You've woken up." But she's not the only one. There's been a number over the time that have lived in that cottage. So that's the story behind her. Like I say, the most recent was a couple of years ago. She might have left 18 months ago, that girl. But she'd been with us for 3 years, so she lived there the whole time. So it was only just in the last while that she lived. But Jimmy, I don't know where to start with Jimmy.
How did the name get attached to him?
Well, his name is James Patterson. He owned the hotel from 1927 to 1961. So his wife died quite early. There's a photograph of when they arrived around at the bar. His wife died quite early in their tenure here, and he stayed on until he was no man. He was 91. His last number of years were not very happy. He was A, very lonely, and B, they took his trading license off him, so he couldn't sell beer. So he got pretty cranky. You could still come through, but even in the late 50s, early 60s, people used to come over on horseback because they could. It was like the drovers and the guys that were running cattle and sheep would come over the top, and they'd stop for a beer, and you could drink your own beer in his garden, but you had to pay him to do that because he couldn't sell you. I've had people come through and say they came through in the late 50s, and if you sat down with him and gave him some time and got him to open up a bit, he was actually just a lonely old fellow with lots of stories. His residence was just this room here, number 6. It was different then. It wasn't a hotel room. That was his residence, and that's the room that gets the most activity. I haven't had anybody experience anything probably we don't get it all that often that somebody in that room says he's there. But we did, it must have been about 5 months ago, 6 months ago. So, but generally you can tell if Jimmy's around. If one of the skis in the bar, there's some skis suspended. If one of them's swinging hard, Jimmy's here. And all the skippers say, "Oh, that's just wind or a bit of the building
There's always
shifting."
an alternative explanation. Yeah.
But even the Dutchman that used to work here couldn't explain it. We'd go, "Harry, the ski's swinging hard," and he'd look and there's no wind, or the doors haven't been open, or there's some days when all the doors are open and it's windy and it's dead still. So that's tends to know when he's around. You don't see him. I only know of 2 or 3 people that have seen him. One was in about 2009. I mean, I wasn't here for 8 years, so I can't tell you what happened in between. But in about 2008, 2009, one of the girls that was here was working late, and she was the last one. She was just finishing up the dishes, turning everything off. And her boyfriend came to pick her up. So he drove past the kitchen windows, drove there, turned into that car park here in Elaine, and came in the back door to see her and said, "You ready to go, Ratty?" And she said, "Yep, just turn off the lights." He says, "Well, who else? Can't somebody else do that?" She goes, "Oh, I'm the only one here." And he goes, "No, there's somebody else here. I just saw him in the window." So, quite convinced. And then Chris, actually, you can ask Chris, but Chris thinks he saw him the other night. Turned his head, looking back through here when they were shutting down. So a couple of the very clear stories that have happened there. So the guy that stayed 6 months ago, he just walked in and said, "You've got a room?" I said, "Yeah, I've got a room, it's this one," and put him in there. We don't say anything about that room because some people it freaks them out, so we just, So anyway, he was a really nice man, and he got up the next morning and he checked out. "How was your stay?" "It was lovely, really liked this place." Drove away, and about an hour later I get a phone call, and he said, "I stayed with you last night." I said, "Yeah, I know who you are." And he said, "Do you have a ghost?" And I said, "Well, there are stories." And he said, "Does he hang out anywhere in particular?" And I said, "Yeah, he does." And he said, "Would it maybe have been in the room I was staying in?" And I said, "Yeah, why? What's happened?" And he said, "Just before I was due to get up, sort of just waking up," he said, "there was somebody sitting on the end of my bed. It sounded like an old man leaning over and doing up his shoes. You know, how they sort of grunt and breathe." He said,
That's creepy.
"Very clear." And I said, "Yeah, that'd be Jimmy. That's the room he hangs out in." And he said, "Oh, brilliant. I need to bring my wife back, make sure we get that room." And I said, "Well, he doesn't visit all that often. You're pretty special that he came and hung out with you for a bit." I had a young guy through a number of years ago, I couldn't tell you when, 3 or 4 years ago, and he said, "I love this place." And I said, "Nice." And he said, "Yeah, I was at a wedding here, and I was one of the men and one of the groomsmen." I said, "Yeah, yeah." He said, "I love it, but I'm never staying again." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "That's in room 6. And I said, "Oh yeah, what happened in room 6? He said, "Well, the first night I did nothing. We drank a lot, passed out, got alcohol up." And he said, "But the next night, because I was the MC or whatever, I was pretty sober, and I went to bed, and he said, somebody was in my suitcase. I could hear, like, he had a couple of plastic bags with laundry and stuff in it. He said, I could hear somebody rustling the bags in my suitcase."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So back in 2007 or 8 or 9, I'd say. Rooms 8 and 9, which are further along from where usually his presence is made known. People were waking up in the night. It happened 2 or 3 times. 3 or 4 times. Wake up in the night, the shower would be full on. Go on to bed, it was off. They get up. And I said, "Oh gosh, how'd you turn it off?" They just said, "We just turned it off." That sounds a bit weird. Anyway, so I sent the Dutchman in, who was our maintenance man, and he said, "Oh, a ballpark some common thing would have happened. It's all old. Something would have just broken in the night." And I said, "Well, but they just turned it off." He said, "Oh, I'll go and check," and he could turn it on and off. And it happened 2 or 3 times over about 10 days.
Yeah.
I guess it's an assumption that it's Jimmy.
Yeah.
But he was here from 1927 to 1961, so, and was the character of the hotel. So that's why.
It's nice to put a name to it.
Yeah, whether it's
whether it's wrong or not, it's nice to put a name to a character that might be there. It's good for tourism as well.
Yeah.
It just makes it more familiar.
We've
more
had
friendly.
a few people walk in and say, "Would you like me to get rid of your ghost?"
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
No, they're good. He does, I mean, it's hard to know. Some of the things that you sort of go, easy explanations for, but it happens a lot, is doors locked that you just unlocked, lights that are off that you just turned on.
And nobody's being harmed. Nobody's being harmed. There's no evil.
And Jimmy's not nasty. He doesn't like women in his bar very much, so for a number of years, if there was a lot of women running his bar, he'd be here a lot more often. And that whole burnt smell over in one particular corner, just over there, but then it's in the room with the fireplace, so easily explainable. But it's quite a unique smell. I haven't had it since I've been back, but quite often in the first few years I was here, you get that really odd sort of burnt smell in the corner, and you go, oh, that wasn't there a minute ago. Things like
That's great. It's good to hear there's a few more stories out there.
Yeah,
I don't think it's just a couple of in the town.
yeah, no, I've probably spoken to half a dozen people that say that they've been visited in room 6 for sure. Those are sort of the main stories, the people that have been in his room, that have had him in the room, the showers, a couple of people seeing him, maybe. People walking in going, oh, who's the ghost that you've got? And you go, oh, yeah, you could be. You could feel that presence. I'm not. Jimmy, because Jimmy is what I say reasonably benign, he doesn't really scare anybody. You might not like his presence in your room if you're in room 6, like the guy that will never stay here again. But he's not doing anything that's scary. He just is there. But I think if you were in a cottage and you had the young girl sit on your chest, that's not so much.
More physical, yeah.
She's not very pleasant. She's not very nice. I mean, there is a story that, and this isn't a ghost story, but the story that is that the 2 rooms on that side of the hotel, the little building that we've amalgamated into the hotel at Annex, was where the ladies of the night did business back in the late 1800s when the rush was running, and their names were Gentle Annie and Roaring Meg.
Okay.
And that's why places around here are called, like there's the Roaring Meg and the Gentle Annie.
Saw that.
Yeah. So that is the story, but we never hear anything about them from a ghost perspective.
Yeah.
So the hotel used to end at that stone wall in there, and so this has been added.
Right.
And you can see the change in the stonework here.
Yeah. Yes.
And so that's the end of the original hotel. So that's where he lived, is through there.
Oh, okay.
It's always that ski, it's not the other.
Get the skis.
And if it's swinging hard, then Jimmy's around. And it does swing really hard sometimes.
So the skis up there. So I'm not filming here, I'm filming up there, it's alright. Sorry. Cool.
So then obviously a painting of
Is that on there?
that's a painting of it, and that's the actual.
Oh, that's the one we saw before. Okay. It's there.
And another photograph about that.
So then we'll do a more recent photo of him, I guess, looking at his age.
So that's the most recent one. That wasn't long before he was finished.
It's up there. Looks like a quirky sort of guy, isn't he? He's got a
Yeah, he was pretty
Bit of a
cranky by then.
really. It's like a character.